Okay, this will be a video response to Luke12000. Luke, I saw this was like a response to Sarahan, and Sarahan was bringing up some stuff about how, anarchists get too angry and they're unable to argue and they get consumed by arguments against anarchism because the way anarchism, it's a moral absolute, and so when someone says we need to have a state, and they're basically saying, saying if you disagree with me, we're going to put a gun to your head and we're going to kill you, and so that's why anarchists get so angry, because any disagreement with anarchism is basically the advocacy of murder, and so this is what, and this argument for morality of anarchism leads to anarchists getting very angry when people disagree with them. And so he's basically saying that this is how ends up consuming anarchists, and can anarchists even really argue if they get consumed by arguments against their worldview? And I thought that's interesting. But then I saw your video, and your video is more interesting. And basically because one little thing you said in the video is that you don't want to be attached to the word anarchist. Yeah, that intro had almost nothing to do with this video. Okay, and you don't want to be attached to the word anarchist. And you say, basically, you don't want to be attached to it because the word anarchist is so loaded. Like, when people think anarchist, they're basically thinking of the riotous activities of leftist, quote, anarchists, close quote. Basically, the anarcho-communists and like the not really anarchists who go around and cause riots and basically create a bad name for a bad image for the word anarchist, which is not what you are, which is not what most people advocating voluntarism are. See, I just gave away the word there. Now, that said, and because of this, I believe that it is best to distance oneself from the word anarchism, from the word anarchist, and say and stop calling oneself an anarchist. Not only because it is not useful, but also because using the word anarchist, because believing in the tenets of voluntarism, yet calling yourself an anarchist is a little bit self-refuting. Okay. Because the fallacy of religion is the belief that life was planned from the top down, when in fact life emerged. Like, you started off with, you went from atoms interacted to form molecules interacted to form cells interacted to form tissues interacted to form organs interacted to form life, right? That's life emerged from atoms. It was not planned down from above by, God or some other archon. Okay, the fallacy of statism is a belief that society was planned from the top, when in fact it emerged from humans interacting with each other, creating, surplus of food, irrigation and all that stuff, and of course any attempt to plan from the top down leads to crap. Okay, this is why you have a zillion religions. This is why you have, polytheism. This is why you have Islam, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, all the Hinduism, the East Asian religions, Scientology. This is why you have a zillion religions. It's all fantasy. It's the same reason why you have a zillion fictional stories. It's all fantasy. You can make up an infinite number of fictional stories in this, and that's why you can make up an infinite number of religions, because religions are just fictional stories. It's also why you can have an almost infinite number of political philosophies. Why? Because political philosophies are just stories. Right? They're just stories about how society should be planned from the top down. And because society is not really planned from the top down, anyone who advocates society being planned from the top down is basically just telling you a story. They're spinning you a yarn. And people can spin you an infinite number of yarns. They can tell you an infinite number of stories, and so you get an infinite number of political philosophies. The truth is that everything emerged, and any attempt to plan top down leads to carnage, right? You saw, as the power of the state increases, carnage increases. Maybe not perfectly linear, in a perfectly linear fashion, but the correlation is pretty striking in Nazi Germany. Vast increase in state power, vast increase in carnage. Soviet Union, vast increase in state power, vast increase in carnage. Communist China, vast increase in state power, vast increase in carnage, right? Increased state power leads to increased carnage, okay? Archons lead to carnage, and they represent a fundamental misunderstanding in how the world works. All right, society emerged, life emerged, all these things emerge. Okay, language emerged. Right, there is no innate meaning to a series of phonemes. The meaning of words emerge through interaction. Like, there's no, like when you say the word sun, there's no innate value to that series of phonemes. There's no innate value to, like, if a rock emitted the sounds of the word sun, like just some rocks hitting together, or maybe some gas released and created the word sun, you know, that word wouldn't have any value. Okay, that's just sound, all right? And so the sounds coming out of your mouth are just sounds, and the only value that these words have are values that we put into them. They are market values. They are market definitions for words. Dictionaries simply catalog this emergent order. Dictionaries simply catalog the agreed upon definition of words. They don't create the definition of words. Thus, the meaning of the word anarchy is best described by its emergent definition, based on how people use it, based on how people see it. And the emergent definition of anarchy is chaos. Okay? The current emergent market definition of anarchy is anomie. Right? Anarchy is anomie. Now you can say, no. Look at the dictionary definition of anarchy. It simply means without archon, and you can have ordered society and everything be peaceful and prosperous without governments, without archon. Okay, so anarchy does not mean chaos. Like, yes, it does. Anarchy does mean chaos, because that is how the word is defined through its common usage. Okay, and because voluntarism basically says that the state is invalid and religion is invalid because it denies the emergent order, calling yourself an anarchist when being for voluntarism, what you are doing is you are denying the same emergent order that you profess to support and advocate the acceptance of. Thus, to call yourself an anarchist, claiming that the word anarchy means something other than the emergent definition, is to invoke an archon of words, top-down planning in respect to language. So, what should you call yourself then? Well, call yourself a voluntarist is basically the word I like. I like it because it's short. I just say I'm a voluntarist. You could also call yourself like a non-compulsive government advocate or whatever. And you could government by its emergent definition works the same way. Okay, voluntary government is not an oxymoron if we go by the emergent definition of government. The emergent definition of government is something like societal structure, like schools would be government. The definition of government is not necessarily compulsive by its common usage. Like, we voluntarists who talk about government, we work with a definition of government that is forced and compulsive, and if you don't do what the government says, you get shot, right? That's our definition of government. However, the common usage of government, people don't perceive government that way. And so you could have voluntary government, and if you go by the emergent definition of government, which of course is the only rational definition, as anything else is just fantasy, as it invokes an archon of words. That was kind of fast, it was kind of rambly a little bit there, but I hope this works for you, Luke12000. So not only are you correct tactically in not calling yourself an anarchist, but calling yourself a voluntarist, but you're also correct just reasoning this through, right? Because any voluntarist who calls himself an anarchist is going against the emergent order and invoking some sort of archon of words. So if you call yourself an anarchist, but you don't mean chaos, well then you're not really an anarchist because you are invoking an archon of words. So, yeah. That's it. And I know my account that I have right now that I'm posting this video on is called Anarcho-Anarchist. Yeah, I made this account before I thought this through. I made this account before I thought this stuff up, before I thought up how language emerges and how anarchism, calling yourself an anarchist, is a self-refuting thing to do. So, whatever. I have another account called Confederal Socialist, and I'm not a Confederal Socialist, so, whatever. I'm a voluntarist. I'm not an anarchist, I'm a voluntarist. You, Luke, are a voluntarist, not an anarchist, And all these other people, anyone else on YouTube who says, I'm an anarchist, is actually a voluntarist. So Luke, you are more right than you even thought. Okay, you're not just right tactically, you're right logically, I guess. Yeah.